In today's Rambam, Hilchas Geneivah Perik Chamishi. The Rambam begins, Osur liknes min haganov hachefetz shegonav. It's Osur is forbidden to buy from the ganav the chefetz, that the item that the ganav stole. V'ovin godelhu, it's a great sin, a great avera. Shrei machazik yidei evre avera v'gerim lelignev gneves acheres. When one buys from the ganav something that he stole, that's causing the ganav to do other thefts. She'im yimotzi lekeach ein negenev. Upon him, it's an isur to buy from a ganav something that he stole, because you're Messiah Yidei Evri Aver. And the Rambam is mamshich in the Perek, the Mamshech halachas of this Perek and the next Perek about the dinim of being nana from a ganav, and if it's to buy from a ganav, and all the pratim about buying from a ganav. It's interesting in Hilchas Gzeila v'Aveda. Right after Hilchas Geneivah, Hilchas Gzeila v'Aveda. So also Perek Chamishi grade, just like here's Perek Chamishi. Perek begins Osur. I'm reading in Hilchas Gzeila. Osur liknis davar hagozul negazlan. Same idea. V'osur lisa'adoi al shinuyoy kidei sheyiknehu. You can't help a gazlan make a shinui in the chayfetz through which he's kind of the chayfetz. Shekola esed dvorim elu ukayetze behen mechazik yidei evri avera. The aver al v'lefnei iver leisitin michsha. When you do these in yonim, you help the gazla, and you're mechazik yidei evri avera, and you're aver on the isra of lefnei iver leisitin michsha. Over here we see immediately, interestingly, two additions that we have in Hilchas Gzeila that the Rambam didn't mention in Hilchas Geneivah. In Hilchas Geneivah, the Rambam said you're not allowed to buy from the ganav. And thus he does. He doesn't add anything else. And over there he says you're not allowed to buy from the gazlan, and you also can't help the gazlan make a shinui in the chayfetz through which he's koinah the chayfetz. Now that concept that when you make a shinui in the chayfetz, you're koinah the chayfetz applies to a ganav as well, because the ganav has to return the actual chayfetz that he stole, and if there's a shinui, so he's koinah the chayfetz b'shinui, and you have to pay for it, just like a gazlan. And nevertheless, in Hilchas Geneivah, the Rambam just said that you can't buy from the ganav. And that's it. In Hilchas Gzeila v'Aveda, he said you can't buy from the gazlan, and then he said you can't help the gazlan make a shinui. Why doesn't the Rambam mention the meaning of a shinui, helping a ganav make a shinui in the chayfetz to be kain? That's one meaning. And then the other meaning is that in Hilchas Geneivah, all he said is the problem in Hilchas Gzeila v'Aveda, after he said Messiah, mechazik the Evra Avera, he says v'Ever al v'lefnei Iver leisitin michsha. That wasn't mentioned in Hilchas Geneivah at all. That's the second chiluk. V'lefnei Iver leisitin michsha is mentioned only in Gzeila, not in Hilchas Geneivah. And then there's something even more interesting. After that halacha aleph in Hilchas Gzeila, there's halacha beis. Osur lihones bedover hagozel. You're not allowed to be nehen from something that was gigazled. Afilu lachar yush. Vushiyide bevadai shedover zehu agzel. Ketzad yoda bevadai shebehema zugzulo osur lirchiv aleho ilachar yishbo. Then you're not allowed to be nehen from stolen property. But here's the pella. In Hilchas Geneivah, that's not mentioned. In Hilchas Geneivah, the whole hemshech is about you're not allowed to buy from a ganav. There's no mention that if there's a stolen property in a ganav's house, that I'm not allowed to have hanoah from that. The Rambam doesn't talk about that. And in Hilchas Gzeila, there's a whole arichas that you're not allowed to have hanoah from something what's gegazelt. Al Kapanim, we have over here three, I think, stark differences between the halacha in Hilchas Geneivah and the halacha in Hilchas Gzeila. Again, in Hilchas Geneivah, it says you're not allowed to buy from a ganav because you're Messiah the Evra Avera. Does he does? Only buying from a ganav, or only Messiah the Evra Avera. In Hilchas Gzeila v'Aveda, he says you're not allowed to buy from a gazlan. Okay. Then he says you can't help the gazlan make a shinui in order to be koinah. That's something that doesn't say in Geneivah. And then he says, in addition to being mechazik the Evra Avera, he says there's an isur of lefnei iver leisitin michsha, which that doesn't say in Geneivah. And then there's a whole another halach in Hilchas Gzeila where he says you're not allowed to have hanoah from the dover hanigzal, even if you're not being koinah. And that is not mentioned in Hilchas Geneivah. What could be the reason for these three differences? Yeah. derweil I didn't see as so reden wegen them. I didn't do tremendous research, but in the Mefarshim Ha'ikrim, I didn't see comment about these three, I think, very strong differences in this halacha between Geneivah and Gzeila. L'chura wollte sich gelegt sagen that all these three differences come from a basic difference that you have in Gzeila that you don't have in Geneivah. That is, by Gzeila, there's a mitzvahs aseh, l'hoshiv es hagzeila. As the pasuk says, v'heshiv es hagzeila asher gozal, right in the beginning of Hilchos Gzeila. First of all, in the meaning of mitzvahs, in the beginning of Gzeila, shalei ligzel, shalei lashik, shalei lachmid, and there's a mitzvah aseh, l'hoshiv es hagzeila. In the first halacha of Hilchos Gzeila, the Rambam talks about the mitzvahs aseh of l'hoshiv es hagzeila, v'heshiv es hagzeila asher gozal. Lagabe Geneivah, there is no mitzvah aseh. It doesn't say a pasuk v'heshiv es hagzeila asher gozal, to return the chayfetz hanigzal. There is the din of tashlumin. Of course, you have to pay back for a Geneivah, and that's tashlumin kefil, amol arba v'chamisha, amol just the keren. But that's a din of tashlumin. Now, again, the fact is that if the chayfetz was unchanged, you have to give back the chayfetz itself, because the chayfetz belongs to the original owner. An unchanged chayfetz belongs to the owner, so of course you have to give back that chayfetz. But a mitzvah of the heshiv es hagzeila asher gozal, that says by gzeila, doesn't say by Geneivah. L'chura, it doesn't say by Geneivah, it says it by gzeila. The Rambam says, it's quite clear in the Rambam, it says that by gzeila. Which it would seem, possibly, that this would explain all of these differences. And the verse is like this. When you're buying something from the Ganev, so by a Ganev, again, there's no mitzvah of heshiv es hagzeila asher gozal. There's a chiyuv tashlumin. So what exactly did you do wrong when you bought it from the Ganev? I mean, he's going to have to pay for it. He'll pay for it anyway. So either he's going to pay the thing itself or he'll pay the money for it. You're not contributing. He's not being over the gzeila of heshiv es hagzeila. So Mela the Rambam says that the problem by a Ganev is the inyan of that you're Messiah De'evra Avera. He's going to steal again. It's Messiah De'evra Avera. When it comes to gzeila, everything changes. There's a mitzvah on the gazlan v'heshiv es hagzeila asher gozal. This gzeila has to be, you have to give it back. It's a much more direct mitzvah chiyuv to return the sinyan. So here, first of all, what's the first the Rambam says? If you buy it, so when you buy it, at that moment you're making the gazlan do an additional avera, which is the avera of he's not going to do v'heshiv es hagzeila asher gozal. And b'meila, there's a lifnei iver, because I'm actually being machshel him right now and doing an act of an avera. Because the fact that by going back to the Ganev, when I'm going to cause that maybe he'll go steal next week or next year, that's very distant to say that's a lifnei iver michshel, because I'm causing that maybe in the future he's going to go steal. It's very far for lifnei iver. But by a gazlan, when one buys it from the gazlan, at that moment he's causing that the gazlan is not going to do v'heshiv es hagzeila. And Memela also the other chiluk, that by a gazlan, if one helps the gazlan make a shinui, and if he makes the shinui, he's going to be kind of the chayfetz, so then he can't do v'heshiv es hagzeila asher gozal. By Ganev, that's not such a problem if you're not going to return the gufa chayfetz. Again, you have to return the gufa chayfetz because it belongs to the other guy. And if you won't return it, the chiyuv tashlumin is the same. Memela, there's no problem by Ganev making a shinu. So when it comes to a Ganev, if you have a no from the chayfetz hanignav, what's the problem? What's the problem with having a no from chayfetz hanignav? I mean, the problem is because it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the initial bailim, so that you can't have a no from anybody's chayfetz. But what's the problem with having a no from a chayfetz hanignav? It's not Messiah De'evra Avera. It doesn't in any way benefit the Ganev. So there's l'cheir no problem in having a no from that chayfetz, aside from the problem of always having a no from something that doesn't belong to me. But that has nothing to do with the chayfetz hanignav. Mashenke by the gazlan, that there's a mitzvah of the heshiv es hagzeila asher gozal. So you can't have a no from it because there's a mitzvah of the heshiv. There's a mitzvah on this thing that the gazlan has to give it back. That's what you have to do with it. Hana from it is the hepech of the heshiv. So that's an avera. Al kaponim l'cheira is very gishmak that all of these three chilukim that the Rambam says with apashtos ligin in the chiluk hakloli that there is between the Ganev and the gazlan. that by the Gazlan there's this mitzvah of the Heshivas Hagzela, Psachiyuv, on the actual act of Hashavas Hagzela versus the general Chiyuv Tashlumin that there is by the Ganev. Even though, again, I'm being madgish, the Ganev also has to give back the Gufa Chayfetz Kozmana wasn't Nishtana because it's not his. But the Teichen Achiv is Tashlumin, not a Heshivas Hagzela. And Ebazei, that would explain L'chura Zeir Gishmak, all three Chilukim, again, between Geneivah and Gzela. We said Biktsara again that by Geneivah the issue is only Messiah the Avera and only by Kinyan if you're buying it from him, and by Gzela it's also issue of Neivel, and it's also if you help him make a shinu in the chayfetz, and it's also an issue to be nana. L'chura, everything is explained through that chiluk. But let's go a little bit further. What's that keda'imek hadvarim of this chiluk between Geneivah and Gzela? That by Geneivah it's a chiyuv tashlumin, and by Gzela there's on top of the chiyuv tashlumin or addition or the eifin of the chiyuv tashlumin is v'heishvus hagzela asher gozel. Good. Like always, you could say azay de gzeres hakosav. The fact is the posuk v'heishvus hagzela says by Gazlan, not by Ganev. Azay de b'shigir zok. Aber was can sein after the emek hadvarim? So nachzich as late, what we find in L'chudei Sichos a little bit in the Sinyan comes very, very beautiful. The hasbaras hadvarim. Let's say bekitzer avort. There's a Sikha the Rebbe Chelik Yud Zayin Kedeshim Aleph. The Rebbe talks about the Indian of a Ganev and the fact that a Ganev is the Isur, the Indian of Geneivah is a Pulanim Sheches. And he brings from the Regachover going that the Rambam in Hilchas Sanhedrin, when he makes categories of different type of lavin, says that Geneivah and Gzela is a lav shenitin l'tashlumin and not a lav shenitik la'asei. Tarvos. Because lav shenitik la'asei means that the asei fixes the lav. That lemafreya, when you do the asei, the lav is not a problem anymore. Lav shenitin l'tashlumin means there's a lav, but then you could pay up for it. So the Rebbe says, b'shem d'Ragashover, that Geneivah and Gzela, it's a pulanim sheches. As long as you have it, you have to return it. So mele, when you return it, you're not really fixing the lav. It's just you have something in your reshus that's stolen property, so you have to return it. So you're fixing the tashlumin. Right now, it's a problem right now that you have something that's not yours. So mele is a lav shenitnu l'tashlumin, not a lav shenitik lase. Azay zok the Rebbe b'shem d'Ragashover, and it's again the hemshech hasich over there. The Geneivah Gzela is a pulanim sheches. Whatever the teichen of that sich over there is to bring out the Geneivah Gzela, the Easter is a pulanim sheches. Says the Rebbe in Ha'ara 37. That's a tzarchi in the Regachover, because how does his beer fit with this that the Rambam writes in the beginning of Gzela v'Aveda, ein leikin alav zeh shayakosov nitke la'aseh, because it's a mitzvah saseh v'eish v'gzela asher gozel. And then the Rambam says afterward, but if the chayfetz was lost, then you have to, then it's nitin l'tashlumin. The Rebbe says by Gzela, in addition to lav nitin l'tashlumin, the Rambam uses a lashon also that it's a lav nitik la'aseh because of that aseh v'heish v'gzela asher gozel. The Rebbe says it's a tzarchion, and then come came. That's a chelik yud zayin. In chelik lamid beis kedeshim, also kedeshim al. So there's a whole sicha about Gzela. A whole beautiful sicha based on the Rambam, also based on the Gemara. Kol hagezel es chaveri shava pruta ki'ilu neitel nishmasei mimenu. When you steal a shava pruta from a person, it's like you're killing the person. Like neitel nishmasei. The Rebbe goes a whole long beer in the sicha. The nekudas hadvarim is that that's something that's special by Gzela, miyuchad, not by Geneivah. When you take something from someone in an eifin of Gzela, that means in front of him, you take it away from him with a takeif. So you're taking away his whole bailus. It's not just the monetary loss. Geneivah is a monetary loss. There's other types of monetary loss. Gzela, when you take ba'inus, you take something from a person, you're mevatel, his whole mitzis, his whole bailus. That's unique to Gzela. And there in the Ha'oris, later in the Sicha, the Rebbe mentions it goes to the Regachover, 46, 147. I'm just going to say the Nukuda that comes out the way I understand it. The Rebbe says that this problem of Gzela, that when you take something from a person's kilu atal neitlas nafshe, that you're able to solve when v'heshiv es agzela, when you give it back. Now, monetary loss you solve with payments, however you pay it. But the fact that you took something from someone bal korche, you're mevatel his bailus, his keach over his things, that you solve when you give it back to the person. In other words, it comes out, we take these two sichas, I say, that when it comes to Geneivah and then Gzela, there's really two inyonim. There's the monetary loss of Geneivah and Gzela, and in that they're both even. They both have a monetary loss. And mitzad that, there's a chiyuv tashlumin. And that chiyuv tashlumin doesn't solve that you took it away. It just, you have something that's not yours, you give it back. It's not a lav hanitik la'aseh, it's a chiyuv tashlumin. And then by Gzela, there's an additional thing. By Gzela, there was the inyan, aside from the monetary loss, you did an act of taking something from someone, and that's kil netlas nafshe. And for that, there's a lav hanitek la'aseh v'heishvus hagzela asher gozal. Give that thing back to him to solve, to correct the bad thing they did by Gzela. And that's an additional concept that there's by Gzela that there isn't by Geneivah. So that l'chura is the yesod to this that we spoke here tonight, that in Gzela, there's a special mitzvah and chiyuv to give back that chayfetz. V'heishvus hagzela asher gozal. On top of the chiyuv tashlumin that there is by Geneivah and Gzela equally. And that creates all the chalukim we spoke earlier of legabi the lifnei iver, when you buy it from the gazlan, and legabi the yisur hano, and legabi the yisur to make a shinui. All of that is misyaches to that din of heishvus hagzela, which is the unique din by gzela that there isn't taka by Geneivah. Azay is lechura. This bemis lechura, that's a very geschmackeri. Da darf man me'eder sein that in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch steht anders from das alles. The Alter Rebbe in two kama pratim. First of all, the Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Gzela v'Aveda in Shulchan Mishpat, obviously. So the Alter Rebbe writes halacha brura sif chof ukishem she'oser lihonis bedover hagozul bevadai whatever kach oser lihonis bedover hagonuf. That I said before, that in the Rambam it doesn't say an isur hano by Geneivah just by Gzela. The Alter Rebbe says kishem, just like it's osur to be nene from a davar hagozul al derech from davar hagonuf. Al derech zeh, and here's the bigger chiddush. Lagabi the din v'heishvus hagzela, says the Alter Rebbe earlier in Sivov, mitzvahs asay ala gezel lahachzir hagzela atzmo imu be'enov l'nishtanes shenemar v'heishvus hagzela asher gozal v'hu hadin leganev. Alter Rebbe says that the din, the mitzvahs asay v'heishvus hagzela asher gozal hu hadin leganev. Zem mishen tzvei chilukim ikrim mamash. The Rambam didn't mention this or hano by Geneivah. The Alter Rebbe says v'chein b'Geneivah. The Rambam didn't mention v'heishvus hagzela asher gozal on Geneivah. The Alter Rebbe says v'chein b'Ganev. So l'chura, I mean, if someone will tell me that the Alter Rebbe is saying pshat in Rambam, b'chidush, darf man wissen, wo steht das Sach in Rambam. L'chura, it looks like the Alter Rebbe tackle different. The Alter Rebbe different shita, and used it on different rishonim. I don't know. The Alter Rebbe used it on himself. As Melat in Rambam, it looks like I said, the v'heishvus hagzela is a din in Gzela, and the Yisra'ano is a din in Gzela, like the Rambam says, ganz klar, but in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch steht take anders. As Meretchen, like a shinuyim, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, there's a general interesting shinui and chiluk, which is bigger than me to start trying to understand. But the Rambam made Hilchas Geneivah as one halachas, and Hilchas Gzela v'Aveda put Gzela and Aveda in another halachas. They had some chiluk halachas. L'chura says in the Rambam's mind, Geneivah and Gzela is two worlds. The Alter Rebbe says Hilchas Gzela v'Geneivah. The Alter Rebbe put Gzela and Geneivah together. Somehow it's a lot closer Gzela and Geneivah. Which Lafi, what we're saying here about v'heishvus hagzela, it chaps very, very gishmak. That the Rambam Taka has a v'heishvus hagzela and Gzela, he doesn't have in Geneivah. It's a different type of a hashava. The Alter Rebbe says v'chein b'Geneivah. So knows that mitzvah I say it's what? It's keilu both together. Ebazei Taka come into one sug halacha. It's interesting. Hilchas Metzia and Aveda Taka is separate with Alter Rebbe. By the Rambam, Gzela went with Aveda. Yes, Lordon, these are big in Yonim, cooking weiter and weiter, but it seems over here, Taka Chiluk in the way the Alter Rebbe Tabegestelt in Yonim, the Rambam Tabegestelt in Yonim, and over here in this little Dvartera, we tried to say a beer and Shitas Rambam, and how that explains those differences that we pointed out.